Star Wars has always been an incredible guilty pleasure of mine, and I've been loving it since 2004, actually, since I got the widescreen DVDs back in, you know, a little trilogy set. But actually, the thing is, going back to 1997, this was actually one of the first launch titles I got for the Nintendo 64, and it is still one of my favorite in the series. We're going to actually look at a port versus port today of Star Wars Shadows of the Empire on the Nintendo 64, as well as the PC. This is considered by so many people to be one of the best in the Legends history, and it spans so many different pieces of media. It is the film without the film, if you guys could actually say. Spawning a soundtrack, a book, comics, and all that jazz. We're going to get into all of that today, but importantly, we're going to get into what is the best version to play Shadows of the Empire. And that's what we're going to look into today. Of course, I'm going to give you guys insight of both the N64 as well as the PC version, so you guys can decide which one works for you. And that's what we're going to actually look into today. So we can't really go into talking about Shadows of the Empire without actually going into the synopsis, what Shadows of the Empire is, in case you're not familiar. That's what I love to introduce to you guys. So we're going to look at it today, but before we actually go into it, I need my trusty hat. What? I can't wear an Imperial hat? It's fucking Star Wars, I gotta do it. So like I was saying, we're gonna look into Star Wars Shadows of the Empire on the Nintendo 64 and PC for today's edition of Port vs. Port. Now this is a video I've been wanting to do for months. This is actually one of my favorite Star Wars games to talk about. It is Star Wars Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64 as well as the PC. What makes Star Wars Shadows of the Empire so great is by a lot of people it's considered one of the best Star Wars legends to date, right next to the Admiral Thrawn trilogy as well as the Darth Bane books. But of course it actually all started with the novel rather than the game, which was created by Steve Perry in 1996. It was later released in December of 1996 by LucasArts as well as published by them. Please rest in peace. I miss you guys greatly. It did not meet the launch window of the Nintendo 64, however it was released a couple months later into the holidays, making it easier for people to actually purchase. Going back to the story, it was developed in 1994. It was actually set piece in between episode 5 and episode 6, introducing people to our newest villain, Prince Xizor of the Black Sun Corporation. Keep in mind there was actually no information between episode 5 and 6 at the time, so this book was actually supposed to write a gap in between that and tie everything together. And if you guys are actually interested in reading the comics, I would highly recommend doing so. I think the omnibus is the best way to do it. It has both the original Shadows of the Empire comics that came out a couple years later, as well as a sequel, and a little bit of Mara Jade too. So if you're curious about knowing what actually went on in the full story of Shadows of the Empire, this is actually not a bad way to review it, but of course read the novel if you guys so will. But if you want to know what the story is, quick glimpse, we have our main character Dash Rendar, who is a very Han Solo type of character. He's a freelance scoundrel on a mission to help Princess Leia and Luke rescue Han Solo from Boba Fett as well as Jabba the Hutt. By doing so, in the background we have Prince Xizor, who is the main series of the title, and he is trying to kill Luke in order to gain the Emperor's right hand and his favor. By doing so, it put Darth Vader in his place, and it actually starts a little bitter war between Vader and Xizor.
You've informed Jabba's bounty hunters that Lord Vader's order to capture Luke Skywalker alive has now been changed?
Yes, and no one will know that the new order to kill Skywalker came from you.
Excellent. My hand must not be detected in this. Vader will surely suffer the Emperor's wrath when he fails to deliver Skywalker alive as promised.
The game is actually a multi-genred game, having ground and air sections that allow you to traverse different sections, as well as use speeders and your Outrider in order to target different enemies, which is actually rather cool and something really interesting for the Nintendo 64. Alongside, we have 10 levels for the player to actually traverse, with the full orchestration on the Nintendo 64 compressed how it may be. The music was actually composed by Joel McNeely, who tried to make his own style rather than a simple emulation of John Williams. Orchestrated in Glasgow, Scotland, by the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, it hits beautiful highs and lows. It really gets into beautiful soundtracks such as titles as Xizor's theme, which you could actually hear in level 8. Overall, if you're going to be playing the PC and the Nintendo 64 version, you're going to be getting an awesome game and an awesome experience. Now, I will say it is rather bare bones to how it is these days, but if you guys put your place in 1996, this was a great launch title and really showcased with the Nintendo 64. But the question is, guys, what is the title that you need to get? Either the Nintendo 64 and the PC version. Stay tuned and we're going to actually get into it because you'd be surprised what the results are for this one. Alright, so let us begin with the Nintendo 64 version. Was released in December 3rd of 1996, 3 months after the launch of the Nintendo 64. Nintendo actually intentionally delayed the game, that way it would be getting a bit more testing so they could actually release it in a proper state, unlike other games these days. Being a launch title, and especially Nintendo 64, I think you know what to expect with a title such as this. Like I mentioned before, there are actually full orchestrated tracks, meaning they are in the game, but since they do take quite a bit of memory, they are severely compressed as well as chopped down severely. You wouldn't really hear a higher quality as you would in the PC version, which we're going to actually get into a bit. But like I said, voices and all the music, it's going to be slightly compressed to fit as much memory as possible into the cartridge. However, that also accounts into frame rate as well. The game is a launch title, but it does have an abysmally low frame rate. It does make some parts of the level rather unplayable if you're so used to playing 60 FPS titles, but it's actually rather tolerable and it is enjoyable in itself. I still have a good time playing Shadows of the Empire despite its low frame rate. The presentation going into the menus and everything is actually rather nice, and it is a very clean UI. Being able to access the level select and going to different sections of the game, you can also customize your controls just a little bit. Other than that, it is pretty much straight and forward what you would actually expect for something like this for the Nintendo 64. Textures are somewhat washed out. It does have a little bit more of a lower frame rate as well as compressed audio, but overall it is a fun title to play, and it's not a bad version to get. Now on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have the PC version, and this is going to be a rather interesting one. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. It was released in September 17th, 1997, almost a full year of what it was supposed to be released on the Nintendo 64 during the launch window. There have been several new additions and changes to this title. Overall, we do still have the same exact core gameplay, but there are some things that we do need to discuss first. First of all, FMVs have changed actually. In contrast to the 2D and very nice art style that we did get in the N64 version, we do have a 3D model FMV. Now, for better or for worse, some people can debate that it hasn't really aged to the test of time, although it is a nice addition to actually see these a little bit more fluently acted. However, if you compare the 2D to the 3D, it is, well, the choice is yours on that matter. They also did add new voice actors for each of the characters. For Dash Rendar, we do have John Saigon, rest in peace, who actually voiced Solid as Snake in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Arsenal is nothing more than a gigantic coffin. Seizing Arsenal gear was never the real objective.
What was your objective then?
A list of names of the Patriots!
Dash, what are you doing here?
Princess Leia asked me to watch your back, Luke. Good thing she did, because while I was sniffing around in Mos Eisley, I overheard that gang talking.
We also do have Bob Bergen, who's the official voice double of Mark Hamill and did the voice of Luke Skywalker and a couple titles beyond that. We also have Tom Kane for Lebo, and we have various other characters and voice actors who are here. They're all very prominent voice actors and all that jazz, so yeah, I think you guys are going to really enjoy that aspect too. This is a PC title, so frame rate is going to run incredibly smooth. It does run at a rather nice 60 frames per second. However, there are some compatibility issues which we're going to get into in just a bit. With a faster frame rate, it does mean that we're going to get more intense sections such as the asteroid belt, where you can actually shoot all the TIE fighters, and it is just much faster, as well as Ord Mantell when you're jumping from train to train, in contrast to the slow speed that you're getting. Controls are a little bit interesting. It is what you would actually expect from a 1997 title back on the PC. Of course, you move up, down, left, and right with WASD, or you can actually use the arrow keys. However, you can actually move up on the mouse and then use the mouse buttons to jump and shoot, which is rather a bit of an interesting style. The music doesn't loop every 10 seconds like it did on the Nintendo 64, but they're actually longer loops and they're higher quality as well, so it just sounds a lot more beautiful, and it really does immerse you a bit more into the Shadows of the Empire soundtrack, which is absolutely fantastic. The use of fog has also been severely reduced, making it a lot easier for you to actually see your draw distance. However, you can turn it off in the options. Also, this is just me, but I think they actually removed a bit of a filter. You can see in the sewer section on the Nintendo 64 version, it does have a little bit more of a green hue in contrast to the hue that we're actually seeing on the PC version. Also, by the way, fuck these guys. However, the PC does have rather huge flaws, and that's what I wanted to get into. First of all is optimization. This is a 1997 title, so it's not really to be expected that we do have optimization problems. I am currently running Windows 10, so that means that if you're going to be running this, you are going to have quite a bit of problems. For me, every time that I loaded a goddamn cutscene, the game would crash like this. And I just waited and waited. I actually had to do a hard reset in order to go back again and capture the footage. Honestly, it was one of the worst experiences that I have captured footage on the history of whatever I do on YouTube. UI is also one of the most unpolished experiences I have ever seen on a PC title of that era. You pretty much actually just open it on Steam, you press play, and you have this very bland and boring menu. You literally select your character. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. I don't know why they actually removed the whole title section and section where you can actually select your theme and your level, but they took it off, and it looks very poor. Very poor. I will say the Steam version does have quite a bit of problems that I actually had to encounter. However, from what I heard, the GOG version is actually a lot easier on the eyes and your PC, so that might actually be something you should try. Take that with a grain of salt, and however you will, of course. Also, one thing to note, in order for the game to actually run well, I actually had to turn off the CD audio music in the dialogue box, and the game is running without music, so it's very bland at that. Not only that, I've actually checked a couple Wikipedia sites, and there are quite a bit of problems for this game. CD music is actually one of them, but it does seem that maybe the physical will be an easier version to try. Of course, I tried the Steam version, but take that, of course, as you will as well. This game does have quite a bit of problems when it comes into optimization, so when you're going to play the PC version, just keep those in mind, and if you could actually get around that, you will be in for a very nice treat. Just be mindful of that little aspect. So this comes to one of my favorite parts of all of my port versus port videos. We're going to come to the comparison of the title. Now, I want you guys to know a little bit before I actually get into it. I can't put the music, only for a little snippet, just so you guys know what it is, due to YouTube copyright, because it's Star Wars. However, I'm going to actually put rather oddly generic music while you guys can actually see a transition and see for yourself which one looks like the version that you want to pick up. Let's get into it. go, guys. That's both the Nintendo 64 and the PC version of Shadows of the Empire. Personally, if I was actually going to go for this, I think I'd really actually stick with the N64 version. I will personally admit, while I do love how high-res the PC version is, I have came with a lot of optimization problems. So that's just a personal standpoint. I want you guys to get what your viewpoint is and what you think is actually the best port to pick up. Thank you guys so much for looking at the video. I always appreciate your love and your comments. If you like the video, I would highly recommend if you like, subscribe, and comment. If you didn't like the video, of course, give it a dislike. Give me some constructive criticism. I'm always looking to improve my videos as much as possible. And if you guys want to personally follow what I do, I'd recommend going down to my Twitter down below. You could follow what I do. I post at least every single day. So you guys are more than welcome to see what random blurbs I'm doing. And lastly, if you guys are interested, I'm actually streaming Deus Ex Human Revolution on my Twitch page at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Those are my usual streaming schedule. So if you guys are interested, come by for some cyberpunk, noir, adventure, whatever I do. I'm into that shit. So thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you on the next video that's gonna come up.